Sue and this is Sue Scribes, and today we're going to talk more about the process of writing, the process of developing your inspiration. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is outlining and getting into outlining. I first of all brainstorm, obviously, and then I start to just piece things onto my little cue cards, and then I sort of just tack them around, and then I try and roughly write out the sequence that they're all going to happen in. Next thing would be finding your voice. I feel like a voice is very important, and for me it kind of developed, honestly, actually it came from a place of rage, like a lot of my best ideas. I was working on a job, an acting job, and I was getting into character. My character was a real badass, and so I would kind of curse a little bit more than I normally do. I would be like, oh fuck shit, you know, and I don't normally talk like that, but I was just feeling it, you know, I was just in the character. And a man who I was working with said to me that I shouldn't curse, that it was very unbecoming of a lady. I think if I wrote a biography, I would call it Unbecoming. That'd be a really good title, wouldn't it? Don't steal it. So anyway, when I started writing prose, this angry kind of unbecoming voice came out. And I, again, like I was saying before about Judy Blume, just her bravery with her writing, you know, writing about periods, writing about, you know, real things. And I started to kind of go along that road a little bit, just try and be a bit fearless and unbecoming. Yeah. And then my voice just kind of got clearer and clearer over time. It started to be kind of cathartic. Where do I end and the narrator begins? We studied this in college, and yeah, like, you know, there's ways to define it, but for me, it's always going to be a blurry line. I am the narrator, and then I'm also not the narrator. The things she does and says aren't always the things that I would do and say, but her voice is more like my inside voice. It's not necessarily my outside voice, but it's maybe how I think a little bit. She's maybe who I want to be. I actually considered writing under a pseudonym and calling the main character the pseudonym, as though it was sort of a biography. I don't know if that's done very often. There's a guy in Ireland who does it. Russell Carroll Kelly is the character name. Paul Howard is the writer, but he doesn't put his own name on the front of the book. It's Russell Carroll Kelly. And Thomas More also did it for Utopia, although that is his own name, but he wrote Utopia as though it was his personal adventure. He was the main character. So yeah, I was going to do that. I was going to, you know, be Drish myself and, you know, write it as though it was my story. Because it kind of is my story, isn't it? Kind of is. But I ended up not doing that because, I don't know, maybe I was afraid people would think I was crazy. Although I don't mind people thinking I'm crazy. So then the next thing would be, when I'm in development writing, I sort of open myself up to inspiration as it comes, and that's really, really fucking exciting. I started painting my characters, and this has been hugely beneficial to me. I know maybe not everyone paints, but does it matter if you're any good? Like, nobody has to see the work. So first of all, I started painting Drish, my main character. It really made me ask myself exactly what her wings looked like. Whereas before I'd only had a vague idea, like I didn't know the exact details. So painting her really helped me with that, you know, I was really able to, I love them as well, like I really love the way they've turned out. I love how spiky they are. Because I was painting for the first time in a long time in watercolour, I didn't know that you can't really pare back colour on watercolour. So if you put down a streak of purple, you can't take that back. That's there, that's on the page. You can't really cover over it in white the way you can with oil paints. So I ended up really going to town on the colour of her skin. I don't know if you can see that, but I made the skin very colourful by accident. I kind of didn't realise it was going to show up so much and that I wouldn't be able to pull it back to make it more of a skin tone. And that was a really happy accident because, as it turns out, I started to think, first I panicked, and then I started to think, no wait, maybe the fairies have got very colourful skin. Maybe their skin is like a mood ring, and it, you know, how they're feeling or their overall mood comes out in colours on their skin. And then I started reading a book by Fern Cotton that my girlfriends gave me called Happy. And she has a colour scale in her book where you point out to yourself what colour you're feeling. And then I started using that colour scale for the fairies, and different characters would fall into different places on the colour scale, so then they all had skin reflecting that colour. And your skin can change a bit, you know, it's not as instantaneous as a mood ring. It'll change more over time if you cultivate parts of yourself that make you happy or make you sad. And then I just really fucking loved that idea, and it all came from a big mistake. So I mean, isn't that amazing? The way mistakes can be revolutionary. Maybe that's too big a word. Yeah, just another example of it forcing me to ask questions about the scene. So I was doing this painting of Trish. Now you can't actually see her in this painting because I haven't finished it. I'm a devil for not finishing things. And she's jumping out of the building down. Yeah, this is in the first chapter. So if you haven't read it, it's a spoiler, but feck it, I don't care. She jumps out of the building, and it forced me to consider, what exactly can she see? You know, what height are the other buildings at beneath her, around her? How much smoke is there? What does the smoke look like? Where are her feet going? Are her feet searching for a ledge? Painting it really forced me to ask a lot of questions. I ended up going back and doing an edit then after that. Another edit of the story or of that chapter based on all the new questions I had answered in my head while doing the painting. Then, just another example of ideas just sort of smacking you out of the blue and incorporating them would be when I was sitting in my kitchen with my mother and a bird smacked into my kitchen window and fell on the ground. And luckily my cat was somewhere else. I went out to look after this bird, and it was this tiny, teeny little bird with a yellow streak on his head. And I was like, oh my God, this bird's beautiful. And he was alive, but he wasn't moving. His little chest was going, but he was like, I picked him up and I placed him upright and sort of flattened his wings down and gave him a little rub. And then I sort of flicked a little bit of water on his face because my dad, who was on the phone to us at the time, told us to do that just to kind of wake him up. He looked up at me and his little black eyes looked right at me. He's tiny and his little eyes looked into my eyes. It was just a moment between me and the bird and no one else. I couldn't stop thinking about him. I loved him. He flew away in the end and went off to live his magical life. I wanted him in my life still, so he came into the book. He played a big role in the book. He ends up being kind of the visual representation of the character's anima, which is her soul. So whenever her soul is feeling things and doing things, the bird is nearby, and so he's the visual representation of the soul, and I really like that. And this is him. I painted him as well. Isn't he gorgeous? This is him there, and he's got a little yellow head on him. And this is Trish, my main character, and she's like looking at him the way I was looking at the bird, except she's a lot more beautiful than me. Isn't she beautiful? Beautiful girl, lovely girl. And he's a lovely boy. Yeah, lovely boy. I named him Goldie for the little gold streak in his head. That's just ways in which inspiration can hit you out of nowhere, and just being open to it and incorporating it whenever you can. Thanks for watching. I'm trying to post a video every Thursday. I am posting a video every Thursday, and it will continue that way. It will. I've said it. It's done. Follow me. There's loads of ways to follow me. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm YouTubing. Follow me.